What if something made for adults, full of psychologically terrifying concepts that instill fear and existential dread, was used as the source material for a preschooler's TV show or game? Is that okay? Or will the kid eventually seek out the source material and have their mind melted? Well, that's what we're talking about today. The King in Yellow is an infamously sinister set of tales. But when you mix it up and throw in a big-eyed, cute and creepy baby, suddenly it might not seem so bad. That's just what the Baby in Yellow is doing. It takes this nightmare-inducing Eldritch horror, The King in Yellow, and makes it into a children's game. And it does a really detailed job of it too. Maybe too detailed. It's not like they took a passing surface-level inspiration from The King in Yellow either. No, this game is chocked full of references, new characters based on older Eldritch and even Lovecraftian ones. And of course, very specific terrors lifted straight from the source material, in addition to changing diapers, getting bottles, and soothing a floating demon baby. This game, by Team Terrible, was originally developed as a game jam game, but it's safe to say it's gone viral, exploding to over 100 million downloads on Android devices alone, not including PC or Apple devices, mind you. So it's safe to assume the number is far larger than that. That's a lot of kids. Now, it boasts a teen rating, but scrolling through the reviews, you can see who is drawn into the appeal of this game. Just like a Pixar movie character with giant baby eyes, the art style seems to be geared towards very young children. Now, parents obviously have some level of blame, you could say, given they handed the device over to the kid, but the game is free, so anyone can click the button to download it. But let's dive into the story and game now so I can show you what it contains and how it parallels the original dark set of tales. Because I'm not gonna lie, they did a very thorough job with this game. So let's start with Robert Chambers' The King in Yellow. This work of fiction from 1895 is a collection of short stories, a few of which reference a certain dreaded banned book, The King in Yellow. The book contains a transcribed play that will drive anyone who reads it, specifically the second act, to insanity in various horrifically existentially colorful ways, but mostly yellow, of course. And this play is a known scourge in the fictional world. I pray God will curse the writer as the writer has cursed the world with this beautiful, stupendous creation, terrible in its simplicity, irresistible in its truth. A world which now trembles before the King in Yellow. For example, the first story, The Repairer of Reputations, is about a man who, after a traumatic injury, picks up a copy of the dreaded book, The King in Yellow. Reading the first act is the gateway to the true horror of the second act, and ultimately the end of his life. And he almost didn't. He tried to throw the book in the fireplace, but it fell short and opened to the words of the second act, which was enough to drive him beyond repair. And he kept reading, because once you read past that first act, you are doomed. The narrator cannot forget Carcosa, where black stars hang in the heavens, when the twin suns sink into the lake of Holly, and my mind will bear forever the memory of the pallid mask. Hopping briefly into The Baby in Yellow for some comparisons, this game is broken up into acts, the first of which is simply feeding, changing, and putting the creepiest baby ever to bed. Of course, it's wearing a yellow onesie with a crown graphic. And like The King in Yellow, this first act lures the player into a false sense of security. It starts off with a quote that is very much inspired directly from Chambers' original work, with its excerpts from the banned play. Specific to this game is the mention of the twin suns, Carcosa, black stars rising, strange moons circling, the Hyades, the tattered king, and Casilda. Right away when we enter the apartment, we see a few books that should now sound familiar after Casilda's song. The Lake of Holly, A Visitor's Guide, Mysteries of the Hyades, and, of course, Reputations and How to Repair Them, which is very nearly the title of this first story in The King in Yellow. Aside from these first books, I want to point out other striking things, like the lost yellow souls trapped in another dimension, visible through the paintings in the apartment. Perhaps they, like the songs of the Hyades, died unheard in dim Carcosa, but not unseen in the game, I guess. There are some pretty specific child's drawings on the refrigerator, here depicting what you need to do in-game, but they are all ominous. Not only because I doubt a normal mortal infant could draw this well yet, but because a lot of the stories in The King in Yellow focus on artists of sorts who are driven mad, a theme that The Baby in Yellow continues and we'll dive into later. In the parents' bedroom, there's a book titled Twin Suns and Strange Moons, which is right from the Act 1 poem. Robert C., of course, Robert Chambers, the author of The King in Yellow, is written on a post-it note with a phone number, as is the name Camilla, which is another name from the fictitious play The King in Yellow. There are many sketches of the cat, and a post-it of a cat, 2 crowns, and an eye. Other things to note in the child's room are this simple homemade paper and tape yellow crown, the king chess piece, the blocks that spell out "Arrives," the assortment of dark books for kingly creepy children, and of course, the plushies, specifically the black cat. This cat story is not only our first bedtime story we get to read this bizarre baby, but the cat features heavily in the first story in The King in Yellow. So far, we've been safe in Act 1 in The Baby in Yellow. But back in The King in Yellow, this guy has read beyond the deceptively banal first act, memorizes the whole of the banned book, finds his own family, Castaigne, listed as heirs to the kingdom of Carcosa, and gets so deluded into this reality that he plots to off his cousin, the first heir, and his cousin's fiancé to ensure his own rise to the throne. Oh, and he takes to dressing up in tattered yellow clothes with a dinky homemade brass and paste crown. It's not paper like in the game, but it is homemade. But of course, to him, this is the garb of the king, being a jeweled crown and the silken robe embroidered with the yellow sign. Before his attempted offings, he works with a man, Wild, the so-called repairer of reputations, to distribute the yellow sign to loyalists. A sign which is all over the apartment complex in The Baby in Yellow. This sign will cause them to rally to his cause and overthrow the current government. Wild fills our would-be king's mind with more thoughts of dynasty in Carcosa, the lakes which connected Hastur, Aldebaran, and the mystery of the Hyades. He spoke of Casilda and Camilla and sounded the cloudy depths of Demhi and the Lake of Hali. This man's delusions are eventually his own undoing, for you see, there is a cat that he is convinced is trying to undo his schemes. He has it out to off it. The cat passed me like a demon, and the tallow dip went out. But my long knife flew swifter than she, and I heard her screech, and I knew that my knife had found her. Only to find that he's, thankfully, confused the cat with Mr. Wild, who now has a smiling throat. Hastur's heir is arrested and dies in the asylum for criminal insane the next day. So even from just that first story, I want to pull out a few things. First, this narrator, while unreliable, is convinced that the King in Yellow is about to rise, a sentiment shared with the other apartment residents in The Baby in Yellow, given their books and maybe their trapped souls. The family name that is allegedly the descendants of Hastur, Castaigne, also makes an appearance later in the game as a painter of The Seekers of the Jaundiced Court. There's also the distribution of the cryptic, hypnotic yellow sign, which is very prevalent in The Baby in Yellow. From the burning marks on the twisting corridors, to the static signal on TVs, to even an analog clock face. The conviction that Carcosa is a true place, a sentiment also in the game, with there being a book about the flora of Carcosa. The story narrator even believes that a certain cat is working against his scheme. The Baby in Yellow does have an entire game update devoted to a black cat working against the Baby in Yellow, helping the player to solve puzzles to hopefully defeat the demon child. In The King in Yellow, the narrator is convinced he, heir of Hastur, will ascend, if only he does some despicable sacrifices first. If we're counting trapped souls as sacrifices, I'm pretty sure The Baby in Yellow is on par so far, and especially so with its inclusion of Hastur. On the third night of babysitting, we have to read the baby a book to soothe it. The book itself is anything but soothing, being about a sheep who is tormented by the young prince and is eventually sacrificed to him. The last page of the book is covered in scrawled Hastur over and over again. So naturally, any child playing or watching this game is going to Google dive into what on earth Hastur is, and what they find will be earth-shattering for them. Now, Hastur is quite the loaded name, and it refers to many other names. The unspeakable one, him who is not to be named, the King in Yellow, for instance. The first reference to this entity was in Ambrose Bier's 1891 short story, Haita the Shepherd, in which it was a god of shepherds. After that, Robert W. Chambers took that name and others and incorporated it into his works as both an entity and a place. Obviously, it's in his story, The King in Yellow. H.P. Lovecraft then took this name and used it ambiguously in his works. No matter how you slice it, Hastur has grown into a potentially powerful, undeniably frightening being. One that is involved in a mythos of extraordinary power, of cosmic entities that don't care a trifle about humanity, let alone a single human life. As adults, humans have nearly come to expect that their world is bigger than their bubble. But what would a child's brain do with this uncaring information? It would shatter their world. They would no longer be a child. What a great nighttime story for an infant, right? I guess if the infant's name is Haster. But we have a few more deadly acts and stories to get through first before we finish painting this horrific picture. The second story in The King in Yellow, The Mask, starts off with an ominous quote. Camilla, you, sir, should unmask. Stranger, indeed. Casilda, indeed, it's time. We all have laid aside disguise but you. Stranger, I wear no mask. Camilla, terrified to Casilda, no mask, no mask. The King in Yellow, Act 1, Scene 2. Now we know for sure Camilla and Casilda are characters in the play. They of course are also featured in The Baby in Yellow. But what's interesting here is the mask. In The King in Yellow, there's an entity, the Pallid Mask. This is some way for the King in Yellow to interface with mortals, either through a stranger or himself. In The Baby in Yellow, there is also a prevalent mask, that of a plague doctor toy, complete with a pale traditional mask. As ominous as this is, the expansion follows one plague doctor, Dr. Nicholas Arkham, as he tries to thwart the Baby in Yellow. On one of the walls, we see the plague masks of all the other seekers that have since left this mortal plane in their fight to stop the baby. Thankfully, the cat is still here. Night 2 of The Baby in Yellow starts us off in Act 2, according to the quote. Night 2, the child laughing. Look, isn't it funny? The sitter, I told you not to do that. The Baby in Yellow, Act 2, Scene 1. As we know from The King in Yellow, Act 2 is not to be trifled with or even discussed aloud, lest you go mad. And I guess we are mad for agreeing to babysit this kid a second night. The baby gets cranky and flashes his red demon eyes at us when he's feeling sulky. Great. We navigate a few more demonic temper tantrums and teleportations, give the poor cat Stuffy to the kid, and call it a night, again in front of the yellow TV set. But of course things go off the rails in Night 3. The mask is off this child now, and the yellow sign is plastered everywhere. And the graffiti is really demanding. The baby gets his own floating demonic cutscene, so we have to give him a yellow sign pacifier to calm down, as you do. In older versions, I think there was an artifact that looked way more lethal. The remaining stuffed animals have red, terrified eyes. But let's make like the missing bunny plush and hop out of this heck hole. And into the artist driven to madness, both in the darker original stories and in the video game. There is an extremely untidy apartment of a musician, one A. Pickman. Looking around, we can see she's an accomplished musician who's won awards for Best Horror Soundtrack and was nominated for her use of color in music. I wonder what color that was. Her albums all seem centered on the places and concepts from The King in Yellow, At the Shores of Holly, Casilda's Dreamscape, and A Yellow Sign. Judging by the messy state of things, her mind is clearly in the hands of The Baby in Yellow. The Tidy Home, Healthy Mind book is especially ironic. She has been crafting music to soothe the Baby in Yellow, hiding it in a place of honor, waiting for his ascension. But there's more to this. Alice has probably the most disturbing books in the game in her collection, the complete art collection, R. Pickman, who, according to a note, could be her father. R. Pickman, or Richard Upton Pickman, is the character from H.P. Lovecraft's short story, Hickman's Model, a truly dark tale. In it, Pickman is probably the most skilled artist in Boston. He's able to capture life in masterful brushstrokes. But despite this, the art club has all turned their backs on him due to his unsettling drawings. We find he's rented a secret apartment in the old part of the city, where there's a well in his cellar that connects to the underground sewers and highways of dark deeds and old magic. The paintings he keeps are enough to break anyone's brain. Hellish scenes of dog-like beings overrunning the subway, possessions and changelings from the Salem witch trials era. The most disturbing thing about them, of course, is how realistic they appear, their faces especially, even if they've never been seen on Earth. The narrator worries for Pickman's sanity. Clearly, his mind is in turmoil to show him these devilish realities. However, it is revealed that these are not flights of fancy. These faces are real. These beings exist. Pickman uses the well in his studio to see them and photograph them and likely to visit with them. The visions of these nightmares are real. Of course, the Baby in Yellow has an artist attic space of one who is also as obsessed as Pickman is. Imagine Googling Pickman's story as a child and realizing that the monsters you imagine to be under your bed are actually under your bed, according to one H.P. Lovecraft. I would not ever sleep again. But we have not even hit on one of the more insidious aspects of the King in Yellow, the yellow sign. In the book, this is both a concept and the name of a story. In the game, this yellow sign is everywhere. The logo, wall graffiti, TVs, clock faces. In the original story, The Yellow Sign, an artist and his lady, Tessie, accidentally read the whole of this banned book, Act 1 and into the dreaded Act 2. After this, shadows gather and Tessie starts to panic, becoming convinced that they must get rid of the clasp of black onyx quaintly inlaid with what we now knew to be the yellow sign. The man refuses, and the pair keep talking into the night of the king and the pallid mask, until a black-plumed hearse appears outside. A dread creature, come for the yellow sign, creeps down the hall, rots the door bolts with his touch, takes the yellow sign and strikes the pair, offing poor Tessie. Clearly, possessing the yellow sign is dangerous, deadly. In the game, it appears on the walls, even post-it notes. Imagine a kid drawing these out and handing them out to friends convinced the ghastly creature will come for them too. It's like an interactive death note. Imagine being a kid who finds one of these yellow signed post-it notes in your backpack, one you didn't put there. Would you think it had the same power as the story you had read? Would you think back to when you or a streamer loaded the game and you were cursed with the vision of this insidious yellow sign? Would you live in constant fear? Or would it just be a phase you outgrew, like Bloody Mary or other ghost stories? But of course, this is all just the tip of the iceberg regarding concepts and references, like the game expansion featuring Dr. Nicholas Arkham. This character's last name is the same as the fictional Arkham location in Lovecraft's works, which later inspired the infamous Arkham Asylum. This Arkham is also credited with an in-game artwork, Yellow, as is Ambrose Armitage with this abyssal gaze portrait of a cyclops with receding white hair and a full beard. Ambrose Bierce, as we covered, being the first writer to pen Hester, among other concepts. Of course, there is another famous black cat in Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Black Cat, although that kitty does not fare very well at all. Poor babe. And then, of course, there's the ending to the game, where we assemble the yellow sign ourselves, thus summoning multiple babies and tossing the world into what seems to be absolute madness. And speaking of absolute madness, yellow is also the color of sickness, and I honestly felt sick each time I sat down to play this game. Whether it's the camera motion or just the overabundance of yellow, this game made me feel exactly how it probably feels to be in the King in Yellow's thrall. The game was great, but I certainly felt dizzy. But with all that said, what do you think of the overlap between the stories? Do you think it's clever to make a children's game centered around a story made for adults? Or do you have issues with it? Overall, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts. And while you ponder this existential question, I invite you to check out Nebula, our creator-made platform where we're always making new original shows and films, like Identities, where two strangers wake up in a mysterious white room with no way out or memory of their past. They must unravel their identity while navigating a system that controls virtually every aspect of their online reality. This new short film by Jesse Earl is only on Nebula right now. Not only that, but I have read close to 200 creepy and calming old fairy tales and ghost stories, and you can listen to all of these a bit late videos on Nebula without ads frightening you. You can also take these stories on the move with Nebula's app. Just download and save for later when you need a spooky sleep. It's like having a grimoire on the go. I also upload all of my videos to Nebula first, so you can see them before they are live on YouTube. You can use my link, go.nebula.tv/abitfrank to check out all of this and more. And doing so directly supports me and other creators, and gets you 40% off annual plans. If you love Nebula, odds are your family and friends will too, and Nebula is now offering annual gift cards that you can gift to them. Use my link gift.nebula.tv/abitfrank to give a year of Nebula to a friend. Thank you so much for checking out Nebula and supporting independent creators. And thanks for watching this mad video on the baby and King in Yellow. Subscribe so you won't miss the next one crawling out of the cauldron right now. Stay spooky!